we've talked about the mood on campus. We've talked about the tactics that the Democrats and Republicans use to mobilize young voters. We haven't really talked about the central issues in your own lives, and I wonder if you don't mind getting a little bit more personal in terms of some of the public policy implications of your vote, or vice versa, if you think about your vote's public policy implications. So we talked briefly about Pell Grants and allusions to university stipends and funding for projects that might come from the state or federal government. But are there any issues we're missing? I know that the Affordable Care Act, for instance, now young people can be covered with pre-existing conditions. They can be covered under their parents' plans until they're 26. That's also used on some campuses, particularly among young Democrats, as evidence of what the president has done for young people. But how are you looking at this election in terms of the impact your vote for either the president or the governor will have in a real-time, first-hand way?
As a young woman, I feel that issues on women's rights are very pertinent in this election, and I feel that Republicans, particularly Romney, Paul Ryan, and those who sort of support the removal of federal funds to Planned Parenthood as well as to contraceptive issues is sort of a non-starter issue for me. I feel that Obama and Democrats are sort of taking the lead on promoting choice for women and allowing women to make decisions that are pertinent for their own health. I know in Mississippi, the Republican state is trying to push Initiative 26 on the ballot, which would force women to sort of, regardless of how they were impregnated, to have the child, even if it's through any sort of form of force. This sort of rhetoric of legitimate rape, I feel it really undermines the Republicans on this issue, and I think that women should have a sort of choice in terms of their ability to choose whatever contraceptive methods are appropriate for them.
Within my own personal concerns, there's three things that I'm most concerned about in terms of public policy, and one of them is energy. Just not just energy independence, which is like a popular buzzword, but just the cost of energy and where we're deriving our source of energy. Also, an additional one is just like I keep reiterating, economic issues. And in terms of economic issues, bipartisan collaboration, because in the last few years, it seems like there's never any agreement between our two major parties on what to do and how to do it in terms of repairing the economy. And the last one, for me personally, immigration reform. I feel that a key component to solving our economic problems is resolving our huge pool of undocumented persons living in the United States. So to me, my vote would hopefully go to creating a more moderate and centrist discourse within our politics, reducing the polarization. I know a lot of people think polarization is a good thing because it creates a stark choice between the candidates, but I think a better thing would be moderation, where both parties can collaborate and create an environment where there's less conflict and there's more collaboration.
How would you all, I think the public and specifically our audience would be interested in this, how would you all objectively, putting aside your political leanings or affiliations and registrations, how would you all rate President Obama in terms of his effectiveness over the course of the last 3.5 years, almost 4 years now? Let me just start with you, Sam. I mean, I didn't really define the scale, but if you want to use a 1 to 10, 10 being the most effective, 1 being the least, I'm just interested, again, dispossessing you all of any political registration that you may or support for one party or another, just in terms of his approach.
I'm going to use a grade scale since we are on a university campus. I give him a B- because he has taken strong stances and made a few issues strong. One is obviously the Health Care Act that he passed, and the other has been ending the war in Iraq. But apart from that, there have been smaller victories for his campaign and for his time as the president, but I don't see him taking strong leadership of the Democratic Party, and I think that's important for a president to do. I don't see him taking active stances on some of the bigger issues. I don't see him actively answering questions about the economy and speaking about the economy as fluently as he should be doing, because the nation economically is better off than it was 4 years ago, but it's up to him to indicate how much better off. Sometimes President Obama's, his cool demeanor is frustrating because you want to have a strong leader and as president, and you want someone who, no matter what your political stance, at least he's willing to make a strong declarative stance, and I haven't seen that from the President Obama administration.
Throughout the course of the last 4 years, I've seen every speech, every weekly address he's ever made, and I always, when people ask me, what do you compare this to? What do you compare his speeches to? This may sound a bit ridiculous, but I always compare it to the president's speech in Independence Day. That moment when, you could laugh, it's funny, but that moment when he's pumping everyone up to go fight the aliens. And that's how I feel every time I hear him speak. Every time I feel that energy, that, you know, we're maybe it's not going to happen all at once, but we're getting there. But the thing is, overall, I think he's done pretty well. I judge a man based on a character, and I believe that he showed excellent character overall. Sure, he's made quite a bit of promises, and a few things haven't gone as planned, but every event, every incident changes one thing or another. Now, the one thing is that I really like how he's proposed a couple things that may seem like radical ideas to everyone else. Like, for example, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, no one really ever thought that we'd have a healthcare system like we do now. It's not as great as it can be. Someday we will truly have, hopefully, we will have a true universal healthcare system that will benefit everyone. But I like that. I like having a leader who thinks outside the box and brings up new things rather than just talking about the same old things that people try to criticize.
Sure. Well, let me just sort of give the audience and you folks an idea of where I'm going with this, because I'm going to ask you what he can bring to the table now if he were to be reelected, and also what you might expect from the Romney administration as a young person. But that sounded to me like an A- or something along those lines. But yes, please interject. Okay.
Yeah, you can go.
Okay. So how would you folks comment on that question for a grade of some kind? Just again to underscore you individually, how the president has connected with a young person or not. And when I ask that question concerning a grade, I'm talking about his approach to everything, or his character, his policies, etc.
I think it's difficult to sort of generalize and make sort of a blanket statement about his approach to very different issues. I think in terms of the economy, when Obama came in, sort of the situation in terms of regulations, we were sort of devoid of regulations in the economic sphere. And we were also in a state where the financiers did not trust the banks, and there was sort of a very mishap of lack of communication between the banks. And so I think that this political climate really drove Obama to make reforms. And I think that I would say that Obama's first term has been a work in progress. I think that there are things that he perhaps could have done better, but there are also things that he had to really pick up from. And so I think that it's sort of somewhere in the middle, and it's hard to make that broad analysis of like how he's done. I think in terms of healthcare, it's very promising. He's also made a lot of reforms in the educational sector. So I just think that it's almost too difficult to rate his first term.
I think everybody's heard the adage that politicians will say anything to get elected, and I mean, although in 2008 I had a sort of like naivete about Obama, thinking, oh, he might be the different politician, he might be the one that actually does what he said he's going to do, and to a certain extent he has tried to stick to what he said he's going to do, but there's been times where he kind of like completely changed his position on what he originally wanted to do and what he ended up doing. One example is energy. He said, you know, we're going to have clean coal technology, and to this point, you don't really see any of that going on. So if I had it, like...
Why did you first mention energy in terms of this election's impact on you? Is there something deeper there, besides just the fact that politicians want America to become more independent?
Well, I mean, if I had to say, I'd say it's, you know, just the price of gas. I mean, that's the one topic that's on everybody's mind in terms of energy, why gas is so expensive. But if I had to quantify like Obama's job performance through now, I'd say he has like a 6.5, 6.5. He's done as much as he can do within the framework that he has to work in. Congress that's divided, and an opposition party that has at every turn said that their sole desire is to make him a one-term president. But at the same time, he's been a little less than passionate in terms of his stated policy preferences. He's been a little too professorial, a little too detached at times. But he's also a calculated risk taker. He authorized a mission to take out Osama bin Laden, which was a huge risk, and he went ahead and took that risk. So there's a mixed bag of accomplishments and non-accomplishments.
And I ask you that question because I'm interested to hear in what areas, given our current political structure where you can accomplish something like healthcare, but only to an extent, and then you're not able to accomplish anything else for the next 2 years. And it seems like, again, we're in the mud here because as soon as something is achieved, the backlash against that achievement, or if you consider it an ill-designed plan, that malady, the backlash is so severe that it makes our political process inoperable for the next 2 years, and that tends to be how major reforms happen and the backlash against them. But in the context of the current political system, what single issue, or if you think that he can tackle more than one issue, what would be your expectation as someone who is looking at a possible re-election and second term of the president, and specifically against any future that you envision under the auspices of Romney? But Jose, feel free to.
Sure. I think in the second term, Obama will most likely feel less, he won't be seeking re-election, so he'll feel less constrained to negotiate, and he will probably drive a harder bargain with congressional Republicans. My hope is that in the second term, President Obama will focus on mostly like economic issues. I mean, to me, that's probably the most important thing facing our political and economic system. So, ameliorating the persistent high unemployment rate, bringing back jobs from overseas, strengthening our manufacturing base. Economic issues like that is something I think he would do well in terms of his own legacy for after 2016, for him to work on in the second term.
I agree with Jose. I think that sort of Obama will try to focus more on the middle class and sustaining a strong middle class as opposed to creating a divide. And I think that he's already begun that process, but sort of straying away from the notion that tax cuts are the solution to our economic saviors. I think that Obama instead would be better at sort of strengthening the middle class.
And so your hopes for
For
a second term and how you think the president might approach that in a way that's more conducive to getting the job done for your needs and your concerns as students and young people entering the workforce in the next year.
As Jose said, I hope he's more focused on economics, because if President Obama is re-elected for a second term, that's when I'm going to be entering the workforce. So I hope it's a little better than now. I'm hopeful about a lot of things, actually. For domestic issues, I hope he'll take a stronger stance on women's issues and the way politicians across the country are trying to take away women's essential right to privacy. I hope he will take a stance on disenfranchisement of voters through voter ID laws. I hope there will be a stronger stance on Wall Street, though I really doubt it. And I hope there will be a stronger stance against super PACs and against the Citizens United decision. And I hope that he'll try to lead Congress to some sort of conclusion against that.
Speaking outside of any bounds, I think Obama is the man we need and the president we deserve. Go ahead, DC, to sue me for using a Batman quote there. But at the end of the day, one of the issues is that anyone who is out there, whether they're a celebrity or a leader, one of the things is that we try to pump them up. We try to rise them up just to see how high they can get, and then if they fall, we say that it's unfortunate, but we also go against them. And I think that we need the hope and faith in our politicians that they should have, and hopefully they do have the best interests. As for a second term, personally, whenever I play a game or a competition, whether it's chess or tennis, I almost always intentionally